Hello and welcome to Safer Journeys, a podcast dedicated to raising children, ending violence, and ending oppression. I'm Heather. I'm one of the preventionists here at Safe Journeys in Central Illinois.
And I'm Melissa, one of the other preventionists and program director with Safe Journeys in serving LaSalle and Livingston counties in Illinois. And today's content is part 2 of our series on grooming and child predators. So today we are talking about grooming and child sexual predators and what to do if a child tells you they are being groomed. We are going to be hearing advice from child sexual predators, not directly. No. This is from a study.
Yes.
We are going to be
We will be reading what they have said to do.
And we will talk about prevention of child sexual abuse and grooming.
Yeah. So again, as always, trigger warning. We're going to talk about sexual abuse. We're going to talk about grooming, obviously. And there may be some other, traumatizing topics. Unfortunately, it's literally our job. This is what we do. Yeah. So if you can't do it today, no biggie. Step away. Don't listen. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself.
That's right. So first of all, we are going to review and recap what we were talking about last episode about grooming. So the definition is when someone builds a relationship of trust and emotional connection with a child or a young person, plus or minus their caregivers.
Yeah.
So that they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them.
Yeah, and I said last time, and I just love it. That's my go-to description, is it's training a person to accept abuse. And that's pretty much it. It's long game manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gross.
It is gross.
It's horrifying.
So let's talk about the 6 stages real quick. So the first stage would be the victim selection, and that's where a predator is going to notice or find or pick out a child or a young person that they deem to have some sort of vulnerability.
Yes. And as we talked about last time too, second stage is gaining the victim's trust in whatever way they can.
Yeah.
They will also be filling a need in some way. So let's say it is insecurity like we talked about last time. They're going to help them feel more confident in any way possible.
Yeah.
And another one is to isolate the child and find ways to be alone with them.
Yeah. The devising the alone time. Yuck.
Yes.
In that alone time, they will likely start talking about sex, desensitizing the young person to sexual topics, maybe images. They might show them some explicit images or pornography, things of that nature, even just talking about sex more. And then after that, they are going to, the final stage, be maintaining control. And it's just creating an environment and a relationship where the young person feels they need their abuser or their predator, that they are better off with than without that individual.
That's right. And I just want to remind everybody that this is something that happens over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Like Heather was saying, this is the long game of manipulation. So we are going to talk now about what to do if a child discloses grooming behaviors or child sexual abuse to you.
Yeah, and the first thing, we're going to say it. I know you'll all be like, well, duh.
Right.
But it's listen carefully and listen without judgment. Kids are perceptive. They can read your facial expressions. Do your very best to keep them sort of neutral. We don't want to show any negative thoughts or feelings on your face. They could misinterpret that, like that they're in trouble or you're upset with them. So carefully listen without judgment. Neutral face, lots of head nodding, that kind of thing.
Yes. And again, with the neutrality, avoid showing big emotions. You might be horrified. You might be mad and sad and all the things.
Yeah.
And child abuse survivors often don't want to tell caregivers because they're afraid how their caregiver is going to react.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to deal with that part. Like they're just like, no, I can't tell them. They're not gonna handle this well.
And it could be for a variety of reasons that they're concerned. Like maybe they're worried they're gonna get in trouble,
Yes.
Or you shouldn't have kept that secret. Like there's a whole bunch of things, but they also know that this is going to hurt. They're not stupid. They know that, like, when they tell their parent they've experienced this negative, unpleasant thing, that their parent's going to feel bad. And kids do protect their parents.
Yes.
And many adults now, but who were young people who were victims of sexual abuse, didn't tell their parents because they knew it would hurt them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially if the predator has some kind of relationship with the family, that is really tough for the kid, because they're like, well, I don't want anything bad to happen to this person. I just want it to stop.
Yeah. And like, imagine if it's your parent's new partner, right? If it's like your new step parent who's doing being the abuser. And then you have to go to your biological parent and be like, oh, this person that you love and married is actually abusing me. And parents could be in denial as well. Like, there's just there's a lot of space for things to go wrong here. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really intentional. And in doing that, even if the child doesn't say, like, it's my fault or I shouldn't have done it, say it's not your fault.
That's right.
We say this every time we interact with a survivor for the first time, or they tell us their story. We say, hey, just so you know, this isn't your fault. You did nothing to deserve this.
Yes.
And it's important to do that with the children and be very explicit about it. You did nothing wrong.
Yes, and often I hear, and maybe it's not specifically about child sexual abuse that I hear it, but often a survivor will say, yeah, but I did this thing. And I'm like, no one deserves to be treated like this.
No.
This is not normal.
And, the predator uses that, this piece of knowledge that, that they don't want to be in trouble. They don't want to get anyone in trouble. So they'll remind the child that, or not remind, tell the child, if you come forward to your parents about what's going on, they're going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't worn those short shorts, this wouldn't have happened. So it is your fault.
Right.
Because if the child thinks it's their fault, they're not going to want to tell anybody about it.
Yeah. It's so heartbreaking.
It is.
The next step is to tell the child they did the right thing by telling you. So often the predator often tells them a lot of reasons why they need to keep the secret, like we're talking about here. And sometimes it'll be something like, if you tell, then I'm not going to be able to come over for happy fun time anymore.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, well, but I like happy fun time, so I won't tell.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, our families aren't going to be friends anymore.
Yeah. Or I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to put me in jail, and I can't be in jail because of whatever.
No. And we love each other, so we can't be away from each other.
Yeah, we'd be away from each other forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're good at manipulation.
That's right. So being able to say, like, thank you so much for telling me. Mm-hmm. I want you to know that this isn't your fault. And then the next one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather.
The next one is, and we cannot stress this enough. You tell that child you believe them. Even if they haven't said anything to indicate that you might not, tell them you believe them.
Yes.
And the reason is that a lot of kids are not believed. So many child sexual abuse survivors attempted to tell someone, some trusted adult, and the trusted adult shut them down. I know there's someone in my world who told both of their parents when they were, 5 or 6. So they were still pretty young. And their parents just said, nope, that didn't happen. And that was the end of it. Like, the child continued to suffer the abuse.
Yeah.
And not get any help for it. And it's not uncommon that happens. So that's why it's so important that you let the child, or any survivor of abuse in any way, know that you believe them. And because child predators, like I had said, I hate saying that they're smart, but they are. They will tell kids, your parents aren't going to believe you.
Yeah.
I'm, you're the best, I'm the coach of the year, or I work at the church every day, or whatever it is. They're like,
Right.
I'm a good person and everyone knows it. So they're not going to believe you when you tell them I did this.
Which is actually why they put themselves in
Yep.
the position they did, whether that's their job or their spot in the community, whatever. I have 2 different stories
Yeah, please.
about this. So the other day when I was teaching about grooming in the 7th grade classroom, and I taught several 7th grades.
Like back to back to back,
yes,
right?
classes all day. So when I did ask them, what if it comes like an adult's word versus a child's word, who's going to be believed?
Yeah.
And hands down, they know the adult's going to be believed. Yep. And that's a big issue. My second story is that when I'm in the classroom with kindergarten students through 2nd grade students, it is just the most heartbreaking thing, but we have to talk about it. When we're talking about never keep secrets about touching,
Yep.
When we talk about reporting, we say, so what if the first person you go to, the first adult, what if they don't believe you?
Mm-hmm.
And the kids, some of them will say things like, well, then you're going to have to set up some cameras and get some proof, you know?
Yeah.
And
little detectives.
just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to get somebody to believe them. But ultimately somebody says, tell another grown up.
Right.
And I said, exactly. What if they don't believe you? And they just start to have these looks on their faces.
They're like, why do these adults not believe me?
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, we'll tell another adult. And then ultimately some kid will say, what if no one believes you, even if you've told all the adults around you? Ugh. And I said, listen, you have some supportive adults around you that include your teacher.
Yeah.
And I always include the teacher in this conversation. And they nod their heads yes.
Like, okay, all right.
Every time I say this, but I say, your teacher and we have both had to take mandated reporter training. And if you tell us something like what we're talking about today about somebody breaking the touching rule with you, then we have to do something about it.
Yeah, legally you have to.
Yeah, so I'm like, if it comes down to it, your teacher is somebody you can go to and she's going to do something about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that was helpful.
No, it sucks that we have to that's part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
Is keep telling adults until someone helps you.
Yeah. It is. And, in our curriculum is very story-based, which I appreciate, and the kids can really follow.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they practice their new skill.
Yeah.
So I give them situations, and then they do it. And in the story, I think it really shows the next piece of what we want to ask you to do if a child does disclose is let the child know what you plan to do next.
Yeah.
Because in some of the stories or situations, it's like the caregiver that's reported to will say things like, thank you so much for telling me. I want you to know this is not your fault and I believe you. I'm going to go talk to the teacher and make sure that this person won't be able to do that to you anymore. Right. Thank you so much for telling me.
Yeah.
And then it always talks about, and then Marcy felt safe and protected by her mom because her mom listened to her and did something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, this is similar with any survivor. Anybody who came up to me or Melissa in any setting and said, I experienced abuse. We would validate their feelings. We would tell them we believe them. It's not their fault. But we would also let them know what their options are.
Yes.
And with some young kids, it's not so much an option thing. It's going to be more like, I'm going to go talk to so-and-so next.
Right.
And then we're going to ask the social worker to join us, whatever that
and
might be.
let's say they start to put the brakes on you.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say you said, I'm going to go tell the teacher. No, don't do that. Oh, buddy, why?
Yeah.
What's going on? And maybe they've already tried to tell the teacher.
Maybe.
And they haven't been believed. And so it's just really interesting. do make sure, exactly what Heather's saying, make sure that the victim, and even if they are a child, like, you support their decisions of what they want to do next. And so, and being a child, like, they might not have all the answers, right?
No, of
so
course.
You can say, like,
Suggestions,
well, this is what I plan on doing. And listen, watch their reaction. Listen, like, look at the nonverbal and also the verbal of what's happening next. And if they're on board with you doing that, great. If not, though, kind of explore why, because they may have already tried that avenue and they have some wisdom there, or they could have seen that person was supporting the predator and they're scared. So really check in and trust your kid.
No, that was just, it was making me think a little as you were saying that, like, how many people or teachers or school institutions I've approached and said, hey, this young person said so-and-so did something to them. And the response from that school staff will be they're troublemaker. They're a known liar. They like to tell stories, right? And it's like, you are not a receptive person then.
Right.
I'm going to go to someone else. As an adult, I'm not even about to, like, tell you why you're wrong here. Like, you're going to shut it down. And I need to know that whoever is going to walk this process with the child, that they believe and support them.
That's right. So, trusting their decisions and really respecting their response to, like, your plan for what to do next, it really gives them back the power and control that the abuser has taken away through all their threats, through all their manipulation.
And, like, that is one of the first signals, I think, to the kid, like, I'm going to get some support now because this person has given me, I mean, they're not going to use the term power or control, but they're giving it back to me. I don't feel like a bystander in this story.
Right.
Yeah. So, of course, the next thing you're going to have to do, if you are a mandated reporter, pretty much anybody who works with kids is a mandated reporter. If they are a mandated reporter, they're going to have to call whatever your state's child protective services are. Here in Illinois, it's DCFS, and they have different acronyms wherever you are, but it's Child Welfare or Child Protective Services, essentially.
Yes, and when it has to do with DCFS, this is a mandated reporter situation where there's, like, the power differential and control issue within, like, a caregiver role. So again, most likely the predator is going to be in some kind of caregiver role. However, if they're not and it's more online, you're probably going to do the next thing that Heather's going to talk about.
And that's going to be report that to the police.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times it's both, right? You're reporting to Child Protective Services and the police. If you don't know where to start, call the police.
Yes.
They'll point you in the right direction. They're going to help walk you through some of that stuff. But there's also most places, I don't actually know if it's this way in different states, but here in Illinois, we have child advocacy centers.
Yes.
So they're specifically to help children through some of these processes. They have special investigators. Everybody on there is trained to work with young people specifically. You can also call your local sexual assault center.
That's right.
Every county should have one. Or, they might cover a couple counties, but you should have one.
Yeah, ask for resources, ask for safety planning, ask for possibly even a legal advocate to help through the process of reporting to the police, of possibly going through the court system if you need to.
Yeah, you don't have to do this on your own, ever.
No.
There are so many institutions that are in place to support the child and the people who are walking with the child through this journey. And that's going to be places like your sexual assault center or rape crisis center. Depends on, where you are, what they call it. Yes. But it's the same thing. Or your child advocacy centers. And a lot of court systems have child advocates as well within the court systems. And they do such great work. I work with someone who's a child advocate, and she got a dog, a therapy dog or service dog, to come and be who the child tells their narrative to in the courtroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because telling the, like, you know, fluffy, goofy looking dog what happened to you is much easier than a whole room full of grown-ups and like their dressed attire, you know?
Yes.
So there are so many people to help get this kid through this process and then help them recover from it as well.
Yes. And go on to live a normal life with healthy relationships.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
So what's the big no-no if a child tells you?
Do not confront the abuser. This isn't going to help anybody. You're most likely going to be hearing things like blaming the child, totally denying that it happened.
Yep.
And again, that starts to plant seeds of doubt, right? And so just don't confront the abuser. It's better to handle this through the police. And if Child Protective Services is needed, and because they're in a caregiver role, like in the household too.
Sure.
But yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, definitely don't. And like, there's so many terrible ways that could go. There could be a physical altercation. Right. Maybe the predator flees and they never get caught, right. Or they do something to the child because the child told. Like, there's just a lot of bad things that could happen if you don't follow that, like, appropriate reporting process.
Right. Or even like after the child discloses, going right to the abuser, being like, did this happen? Well, of course not.
No,
they're too manipulative. Like,
they're
you are
good
not
at manipulation.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's going to make it more into like a child called wolf situation, and we don't need that either.
No,
we need to believe the child when they come forward. We need to say it's not your fault, and we need to be there for them and support how we need to move forward together.
Yeah,
because it's their life. This is what happened to them.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. And we're going to help get them to a better place and get control back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to pivot. Well, not really pivot, but we're going to start talking about, I know we've said it a few times, these advice from predators. So let me tell you a little bit about where this information came from. So there's a woman, her name's Corey Jewel Jensen, and she's done a ton of work with child predators that were in treatment, rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it. They had been caught and they were working through what they had done, essentially. And they said they wanted to be part of the solution, right? Because so far they've been part of the problem. So to be part of the solution, what can they do? Well, they can educate the public about how a child predator thinks. And that's where advice from predators started. And there's she put them into some different headings. There's a ton. We're not going to go over all of them, but we're going to go over a few of the big ones.
Right. So one of the first headings is, who are the predators? And I'm going to say this in the quotes like they did. Yes. So I'll use the pronoun I. Mm-hmm. So I can be a parent, step-parent, relative, family friend, teacher, clergyman, babysitter, or anyone who comes in contact with children. And I am likely to be a stable, employed, respected member of the community.
Yep.
You wouldn't really see that coming, but there you go.
Yeah, the predators are paying their bills.
Yep.
They're not stepping outside the lines.
Right.
They almost looked perfect.
Yeah.
At least from the outside.
Yeah.
And that is strategic because you are more likely to believe them against the child's word.
Right. And you're more likely to be able to build a relationship of trust with the child and their family too.
Yeah. So another thing, and one of the other headings was, well, how do they even gain access to kids? Or how do they gain their kids' trust? So I've got a couple here I'm going to read to you. The first one is, I may touch your child in your presence so that he or she thinks you are comfortable with the way that I touch you. Wow. How freaking sneaky.
Yeah.
And then the next one here is, they say like, oh, how do you gain access to kids? And the predator says, it's easy. I pay attention to your child and I make them feel special. That's it.
It just seems too simple.
It does, but it is simple, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, very
scary.
Super
scary. Another way in which they answered this question is, I present an appearance of being someone you and your family can trust and rely on. So they're reliable.
Yeah, you can call on them for help.
Yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
helper.
Oh, you gave an example. I don't remember if it was this episode or last, but it was about having maybe some extra childcare where it's like I have maybe after daycare, I have an hour between then and when I need to come home. Oh, you're willing to watch them? Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, and for free?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're a saint.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I would hit that up in a second as a parent who needs daycare for my kids.
What parent wouldn't?
Yeah. So it's stuff you need, right? Like not just the kid needs, the family needs.
Yeah, they know they're filling a need in a variety of ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another way in which this question was answered was, I get to know your child's likes and dislikes very well. So again, they pay attention.
It's a parent.
Yeah.
It is a parent because this is their research essentially, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Their background research on the child. What do you like? What do you not like? Because I'm going to give you all the things you like.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. The next question that they posed to the predators was, well, why don't predators get caught? And one of the responses was, I make it look like an accident, a mistake, or a misunderstanding. It is not. Ugh.
Right. We know how purposeful and intentional this process is.
Yep.
And
They create a situation where they could make it to be an oops. Oh, I just accidentally did whatever.
Yeah. Gross. Another response is, I use situations like tucking them in at night or touch them while they sleep.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
Predators, they may start off too, not with touching, but just looking at them, being in their room while they're asleep. Because that way you're going to know, does the child stir? Right? Like maybe the kid's a really light sleeper, and as soon as you walk on that floorboard, they're, sitting upright. Or my friend's kid, they're snoring like a freaking truck driver out like a light. You'd think they were like on a bender or something. Nope, just a regular old day. Out like a light, can't be woken up. But yeah, the while they're sleeping thing, if they have access to the kids while they're sleeping, they will go in the room and, start testing the boundaries.
Yeah. Another response was, I desensitize children to nudity. I leave the bathroom door open so they can see me. And it feels like something that's like, oh, that's like an easy thing to do, right? Because like you have to have your private body part in order to go to the bathroom. Sure. So it's like, well, of course they're going to do that in the bathroom. But like, again, they're desensitizing this child and making it seem like, yeah, like it's okay to like go to the bathroom in front of each other. And what else can we do with our private body parts in front of each other? Like, so.
It's incremental steps.
Right.
Like it starts with I forgot to close the door when I went to the bathroom.
Right.
And then develops into much more, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but gross, terrible things.
Yeah.
And then another one of the statements for why they don't get caught was, I confuse the kids. I tell them that all families do this, even though I know they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling the kids it's normal.
Yeah.
And they don't know.
How could they?
They have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know
and because
what other families are doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're not in another family. No. They're in this one. And you have an adult telling a kid something, and kids are taught to listen, respect adults, and obey.
Yep. It's
adults.
True.
Yes. So some general advice that the predators have given. One is, I will make it hard for your child to tell you what I am doing. Make it easier for them. Communicate, listen, believe.
Yep, because kids don't want to tell if they're not going to be believed.
Right.
And in addition to not being believed and getting the support and help that they need, now they've been labeled as a liar or someone who tries to start trouble. So like it is only making things worse for them.
Yeah, and they can make it look like the kid is like, oh, that's such a troubled kid.
Yeah.
They've got so many problems.
That is that is an incredibly common thing that predators will rely on. Oh, they were in and out of juvenile detention. You can't really trust them, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They know what they're doing. It's terrible.
Another piece of advice is trust your child, not me. This is coming from a predator. Trust your child, not me. They deserve your trust, not me.
Yeah, that one's super powerful to me. Like,
It is.
could you imagine if you were a parent and your child came to you, said, so-and-so touched me, and you said, no, that couldn't possibly be the case, and only come to find out years and years down the road it was? Wouldn't you have rather done your due diligence?
Yes.
And found that your child, they overwhelmingly do not lie about this for the most part, but at worst, you find out your child lied.
Right. And then what else is going on?
But like
why are you?
Yeah, I mean,
that?
then there's something behind that as well. But like
But this is horrifying. Like
Yeah.
people don't tend to lie about this.
No, and
It's overwhelmingly
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, and all abuse, not just grooming and child sexual abuse.
That's right.
Intimate partner violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever it might be. The studies have shown that somewhere between 2 and 10% of abuse that's reported to the police is false. That's not very much, and that's the exact same number of false reports for any other crime. So false reports of, whatever, a robbery or some other physical assault, it is the same as any other false reporting. Very rarely does it happen. So statistically, at a minimum, 90% of the disclosures we receive are truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the low end of like it's 90 to 98% really.
That's right. And that's why we say start by believing.
Yep.
Because that's where we have to start.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another piece of advice is once I start, I will not stop. Only you can stop me by calling the police. So you need to realize the key role that adults play in a child's life. Something I teach in the classroom. Adults are here to keep you safe.
Yep.
Like when you report to an adult, they want to make sure that you're safe.
Yeah. It's every adult's job.
That's right.
To keep you safe.
That's right. And I know in a second we're going to be touching on prevention and
Yeah.
what we teach in the classroom. I know I want to make sure we highlight another piece about like kids will not lie about this overwhelmingly, but why maybe sometimes like
It appears that they're lying.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe the story like changes a bit or something. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So sometimes, and actually we heard this from someone who works for Child Protective Services. Do you remember when that person was like, oh, their story kept changing?
Yes.
Of course their story kept changing. If you listen to our trauma podcast, or podcasts, plural, you will have learned that when a traumatic incident occurs, people have trouble sort of keeping a timeline or a chronological order. And it is just the nature of, the hormones and the different things that are happening in our brain and our body when something traumatic is happening. So it is absolutely normal if a survivor tells the story out of order, if there are big things you expect they would remember and they don't, or if the story changes. And a lot of times the story changing is more the person or the survivor trying to appease the person they're telling the story to.
Yes, and I would also add it may be they're confusing one time of the abuse with
Sure.
another time of the abuse because the abuse has been so repeated.
Yeah, I mean, I get my days mixed up, right? I'm like, I don't know, it was sometime this week.
Yeah.
Could you imagine like a traumatic incident that repeatedly occurs? Of course, the memories will get kind of smushed together or pulled
Yeah.
apart in a weird way. It is normal for anybody experiencing trauma to have some of these memory lapses or inconsistencies in their memory.
Yeah, when I remind some of our community partners of of this fact.
Yeah.
And they choose to keep going on their little train of like, yeah, but the child, blah, 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 blah.
Nope.
Sometimes I say, have you been in this field for a long time? How are you feeling? Because it seems like they have some vicarious trauma,
Yeah.
or they're just burnt out, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
like, that's why it's so important that we do take time off in this field. And I just want to keep reiterating that. But I also want to get to the prevention of child sexual abuse and grooming. But I just want to say that like it's just so prevalent, this attitude of like not believing the child or seeing an inconsistency and being like, oh, they're lying.
There's another reason to support my theory that this isn't true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, no, in truth, it's actually supporting the fact that it is true, because trauma survivors don't remember things in the right order or very well.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they could even be like, they could be a child. They could say, hey, this happened, but maybe it wasn't that setting or that person. It was somebody else, but that's not their memory because they don't actually remember the face of the person. So they insert a face that they do know.
Yeah.
And so it's so tough.
And what
like,
if this
that's a little kid?
And what if this happened 10 years ago?
Right.
Like, you've only now had the strength, the courage, and the individuals that you know can support you to share that.
Right.
But it happened 10 years ago. There may very well be some missing pieces that your brain was like, nope, get rid of this. You don't need to remember it. You're safe for not knowing.
Yes. Yes. And that is so, that happens so often.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's talk about the prevention of child sexual abuse and grooming. There is one law that is in 38 states, I believe, right now, Aaron's Law. And Aaron's Law is one of a variety of different mandates that we need to be teaching sexual abuse prevention in K through 12 schools that are publicly funded. And each state's going to have extras but like every state pretty much has something written into their K through 12 education on preventing child sexual abuse.
Yes. And of course, it's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate. They have a whole scope and sequence for the grade levels. But we are going to talk a little bit about prevention that we can do at home and in the classroom. And it's interesting to think about what advice came from the predators on prevention. And this is the one that stabs me in the heart.
Yeah, me too. When I first read it, I went, oh, no.
Because some of my preventionists are in the classroom. All right. So one of them was school prevention program isn't enough.
I know. You're like, what?
I mean, the CDC even told us that's true. We have to be doing things in the community and changing culture and working more at community and societal levels, like not just individual and relationship skills, which those are important too, but we really need to be changing the culture and making it so that sexual violence is not tolerated in our communities.
And like, how messed up is it that we're putting the burden of protecting ourselves on kids?
Yeah.
Make sure you don't get sexually violated.
Right.
They're children. They should not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So like, bigger picture, we want to do things that are going to stop it before it starts. But
that's right.
Because that's not where we are, unfortunately, we do need to teach kids how to protect themselves.
That's right. And okay, so another thing I did with the 7th graders when we were talking about grooming is I was like, okay, so how do you educate your community on this, on grooming, on the need for adults to believe children when they come forward with disclosures of child sexual abuse and grooming? And one student says, we need to empower the young people to have a voice. They need to know they have a voice in the first place. And then we need to educate the parents and caregivers on how to empower the kids' voices and listen.
Me and Melissa are giggling right now because this is pretty much what we're trying to push all the time.
Right. And honestly, that's the grounds for this podcast.
Yeah.
Like that is the purpose of this podcast. And I was just like, oh girl, you're speaking my language. Like
we should have gotten a recording of her saying it, right?
Well, it made me really want to be like, can I just start a prevention group here now? Like, it was so cool. I loved that moment.
The kids want to do, and like,
they do.
That is so inspiring for me, is that the kids want to do this work.
Yes.
They want to make the change. They want to live in a better society than we currently live. Like, why are we holding them back?
Yes. There was one kid who's like, I want to change the rules. Like, I want to make it so child sexual predators are nowhere near the school. Like, and I know there's like so many feet they have to be, but like, he's like, I know
bigger.
I know that there's somebody living within like less feet than that within the school. And I think we need to be doing a better job at monitoring them, and we need to write better laws. And I'm like, you're right. Oh, you're a policymaker. Like,
oh, do you remember when I sent you those kids that compiled a list of the quote unquote creepy things their teacher was doing? These kids documented, I don't remember what school it was. I do remember it was on the Discord platform.
Oh, wow.
The students were getting vibes that things were creepy. And so they started recording the thing, like writing down every time this something weird or creepy would happen. And then they brought it to the administration. Like, they actually made the change.
Oh, wow.
Without adult, like, this was middle school, I want to say. Like, there wasn't guidance from someone else. These kids thought, well, we got to document it because they want proof.
Right.
And they did. And they did make a change. You know, they got rid of that educator. I'm sure there was, you know, legal implications for them as well. But like,
right.
I was so flippin' proud. These kids I don't know. Don't even know what school they're from, but I'm just like, you guys are amazing.
Yes.
You did it.
Yes, young people are amazing and inspiring. And so to hear, you know, the school prevention program, it isn't enough.
It's not.
And so that's why we need to be empowering our young people inside and outside of school. And we need to be learning how to listen to our young people. So the second part about the advice from predators on prevention is, if you don't teach your kids about sexuality, I will.
Yep. Someone is going to fill that void.
Right.
And it's not necessarily going to be things that you would like your young person to know about sex and sexuality.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll talk in a second about some of the prevention education, what's really needed because of this issue.
Yeah. So most school prevention in the classroom, it's curriculum based. So there are a bunch of different evidence-based curriculums out there that you get to choose from to go through. But again, we're going to like really deep dive into the school-based prevention in an upcoming podcast. So you'll have to listen. You'll have to wait and listen for that one. But yeah. I guess, why don't we talk about the first rule?
Yeah, so the first lesson that we do with kids is like the 8 never never rules, and they're all safety rules. And so we're immediately grounding them in, like, we're talking about safety, your safety here.
Specifically body safety, right?
Yeah, a lot of it does have to do with the body.
I'm just thinking about the images, right? Don't play with, never play with fire.
Never touch a gun.
Wear your helmet, right?
Right.
Seatbelt.
Wear your seatbelt. Always ask for, well, that's the next rule, but always ask first before you pet a dog.
Yeah, because you don't want to get bit.
Yeah, like always look always for traffic. Like, and it has to do with your bodily safety.
Yeah.
And so the next time we see them, we're talking about the always ask first rule, which is, you know, before you go somewhere or do something, always ask the adult in charge first. Mm-hmm. And we talk about, I say, why is that important? And they're like, well, because they need to know where you are. And I said, yeah, because the adult's job is to make sure you're safe, and they can't do that if they don't know where you are.
Yeah.
And so, and they get that. And so grounding it in these 2 rules, we can really build off of this stage. And so we start to talk about what's a safe touch, what's an unsafe touch, and an unwanted touch. And a safe touch is a touch that makes you feel loved and cared for.
Yep.
An unsafe touch is a touch that hurts your body. And an unwanted touch, I love when kids do this, is a touch I just don't want right now.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. And then the next time we're talking about the touching rule. And it's a bigger person should never touch your private body parts except to keep you healthy and clean. And we kind of break that down a little bit. We talk about what are the private body parts. And often schools are saying, well, we want you to teach the swimsuit rule. Okay. So the swimsuit rule is, your private body parts are the parts that are covered up by your swimsuit. And I do make the point, like, I know you're not in your swimsuits right now, but think about when you do wear them. What parts do they cover? Now, I'm not asking them to name them in class because that's frowned upon right now. It is a hot button topic. I was just talking about this with a principal the other day, and he's just like, oh, yeah, it's a hot button topic. I go, oh, yeah, super political right now. And I said, it's just so important they know the names of their private body parts. And he's like, I know. And I said, I started tearing up because I've dealt with this in other schools too, and it was really nice to see he understood. And he was telling me, well, parents and caregivers have been calling and we're so nervous and all this stuff. And I was just like, child sexual abuse prevention education is comprehensive sex ed for this age group. And that's what they were so nervous about. Like, oh, are they going to be teaching our kids like how to have sex? And it's like, that's actually not sex ed for this age groups.
Yeah, because it's all developmentally appropriate.
Right. Absolutely. That it is. And so that just like really gets me. But anyway, so that's the part that I break down about the private body parts. And then we talk about, okay, so what bigger people in your life would be helping you keep your private body parts healthy and clean? Who would be normal people that would help you with that?
Right.
And typically parents and doctor and nurse is what comes up.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll say grandparents, and I'll make a point of saying, if your grandparent is one of your main caregivers, then that would be normal.
Absolutely.
I said, but it's a really short list. And I want you to remember that. This is a short list. Now let's talk about the people who aren't normal that would be helping you keep your private body parts healthy and clean. And I say, would your dentist? And they're like, no. And I say, oh, yeah, they take care of your mouth and teeth, don't they? Like, no, they wouldn't be doing that. Would your teacher? No. And they're like, yeah, no, absolutely. And then like the teacher's eyes will bug out of their heads.
They're like, I'm not doing that.
And I'm like, no, truly. But I take that moment to say, oh, but if somebody is breaking the touching rule with you, your teacher's a great person to go tell.
Right.
And I take that moment to really make that connection for them. But I say, but a teacher should never be touching your private body parts.
No.
So it's interesting just to know that, like, okay, we've talked about unsafe touches, and we make the connection between like an unsafe touch is breaking the touching rule.
Yep.
So if somebody is touching your private body parts, they are breaking the touching rule and they are giving you an unsafe touch.
Yeah, and the predators know what we teach.
Yeah.
Because one of the advice from predators was that people with touching problems are tricky, meaning they're going to play tricks on you so that they can touch your private body parts.
Yeah.
So the predators are aware of what we're teaching in the classrooms as well. And on that naming the private body part, predators explicitly say, if a young person uses the correct anatomical term, like say a little kid goes, don't touch my penis, or that's my penis, whatever it might be, the predator knows they've been educated and that they are assertive.
Right.
And that is a deterrent. That predator knows that someone is talking to those children or that child about this, and they walk away.
And they'd be able to report and use the correct language, and the adult would be like, wait, what is going on? But if they're like, oh, they tried to touch my cookie. Like,
okay, well, I like cookies too. So
yeah. Like, I wouldn't really be able to do anything with that.
It doesn't hold up in court, unfortunately.
Right.
And like, that's not how I want to like talk about these things, but like, you can't prosecute someone for touching your cookie.
Right. Now, if you want to make sure that your kids are safe and like able to report if something happens, because you can't be there every minute of the day, right? But let's say if something were to happen like this, right? They were being groomed. They got to the point of the sexual part of the relationship and the kid tried to tell. Wouldn't you want them to be able to tell with the correct language? And being able to communicate it clearly and even have the deterrent before it happened, right?
I mean, preferably,
Let's say, they were able to refuse it and say, don't touch me. Don't touch my vagina. And then being able to say, this person just tried to touch my vagina.
Right.
Like
there's no
and they know
ambiguity.
it's wrong.
Yeah.
Too. Like it's not normal.
Nope.
And they know that.
Yeah. I mean, in addition, like, naming private body parts is good for health too, right? Like if a little, girl gets a yeast infection.
Right.
And she says, my vulva itches.
Right. And that's
great.
Yeah.
Easy. Let's go to the doctor.
Yep. And that was an example I gave about the doctor too.
Yep.
I said, we need to be able to have people help us keep our private body parts healthy and clean. Like, let's say maybe something's going wrong in there and you need somebody to look at it. Who would that be, right? Like, and helping them make that connection, because we know it's not like our private body parts have many functions. And, and without being able to go into it very much in the classroom, I try to allude to it with like doctor visits and things like that.
Well, right. Like, see, you're 5 or whatever, and you have a little poo-poo incident on accident.
Right.
Like, who's going to help you clean up your bottom?
Exactly. Yes.
And that is a health and safety issue, because we're cleaning you up so you don't get an infection, that kind of thing.
Right. They're checking you out. But, spending way too much time down there, like, that's not normal.
No. And like, no parent really wants to spend that much time down there, just like doing like what they have to do to keep you safe and healthy.
No. Oh my goodness.
I know. So let's see, what was I looking at? Oh, right. Secrets. We also talk to kiddos about secrets in the classroom, and that is, again, a sexual abuse prevention aspect. So predators, like I believe it was the last episode, we said they test secret keeping ability with kids.
Yes.
So we tell them, safe adults don't ask kids to keep secrets.
That's right.
I will say that some people are like, what about a present or a vacation? It's like, we do also speak about the difference between a secret and a surprise.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And I liked it the other day. Somebody said, oh, that's a safe secret. There's a difference between a safe secret and an unsafe secret. And I was like, ooh, I like that.
A safe secret isn't going to hurt anybody.
That's right. It's not going to hurt anybody. Unsafe secrets hurt people.
Safe secrets are going to bring someone joy for, oh, we were planning a trip to Disney World, like,
wow,
good stuff.
Exactly. So some more prevention is internet safety. Make sure you don't give out personal information. You need to make sure you're keeping your location tracking off on games, social media, on Snapchat and Instagram. Just to have them turn their location off.
Yep. And make sure you may need to learn how, but or ask your kid to show you how. Maybe that's a good way to do it. But
that's right.
Yeah.
And another big key to it too is like, just make sure your kids do know the people personally that they're playing with online. And I'm thinking more about like the online groomers who you might not know. Yeah. But again, mostly it's going to be somebody that your family knows.
And so the last thing we do in a class, well, I mean, we do a lot more stuff, but the last thing that we're going to talk about today is what I think one of like my favorite things for little kids is to help them practice being assertive and saying no. They're not very often given this platform to tell adults no and be loud and assertive. So it's really fun for them. And we all know that practicing something makes it a lot easier in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm always touched by this part. I mean, no, not touched.
Oh, yeah. Woof.
That was a weird way to say it. Sorry. But with the assertiveness skills that they are learning, I love it giving them a situation and then they say things like, don't touch me there. Mm-hmm. That's an unsafe touch. Yeah. Or you're hurting my body. Oh. I'm like, oh, yeah, definitely. Now, who would you report to? How would you say it? And they practice reporting too. Which
right,
is
and who
really
they can
important.
report to, right?
Yep. Yep. So they're really thinking about who are their trusted adults in their life? What would they say to report in this situation? And they practice saying no, or don't touch me, or that's not okay, to the person who's doing it to them.
Yep.
So I love that part too. So we know that this is very heavy and very disturbing information. Please be sure to take care of yourselves today. We can prevent child sexual abuse. And if we can get everybody on the same page about talking to their kids about this hard stuff, our kids are going to have the skills and knowledge to deter predators. Like that's all there is to it. Like, this is a preventable thing. And but we all have to be on board.
Yeah. And so for our media that we love this week, I watched this series. I watched it on Hulu, but you can watch it on Freeform as well. It's called Keep This Between Us. It is a documentary that an adult woman puts together about her experience being groomed and abused as a child. And this was in high school. It's really, really good. It's hard to watch, but you'll see everything that we've talked about happen in these episodes. It's very illuminating, I would say.
Yes. So thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. And join us next time to learn about how K-12 schools tackle child abuse prevention. So thanks for listening. Keep listening to hear about support resources and how to contact us.
Look out for new podcasts every other Monday on anywhere that you can find your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Anchor FM, you name it. We're there. If you have any questions, and we would love to hear from you, you can email us at saferjourneyspod@safejourneysillinois.org. You can also message us on social media. We have a Facebook and an Instagram that you can find us at. And let's talk about some resources for anyone who's experiencing abuse. If you happen to live in and around LaSalle or Livingston County in Illinois, please feel free to call Safe Journeys support line at 815-673-1555. 24/7, confidential, services are free. If you don't happen to be in our area, there are 2 national hotlines that you can call for support. For sexual violence, you can call RAIN with 2 N's. That's the National Sexual Violence Hotline. Their phone number is 800-656-HOPE. They also have a live chat on their website if you're interested. And for domestic violence or intimate partner abuse, you can call the hotline, which is simply thehotline.org. This is our national domestic violence hotline, and you can give them a call at 800-799-SAFE or chat live on the website. Thanks for listening.